Clear here with a knife video for you. This is my m21-14G. It's a CRKT knife and one of the m21 series, of which there are actually quite a few. And if you add the m16s, which are very similar, just with a different blade shape, you get even more variations. So this little style of knife designed by Kit Carson has become sort of a real big thing for CRKT. There's a whole bunch of these in various different forms. This is certainly my favorite one. It's the 14G. It's quite large, 9.5 inches, with almost a 4-inch blade. Depending if you measure from the handle, it's 4 inches. If you measure from the blade stop, it's 3 7/8. But big knife, 5.9 ounces, so almost 6 ounces. Fairly heavy knife, fairly well built. And great if you like a large folding knife, which I definitely prefer. So, what do we want to know about this? I've already given you the size and weight overall. It is a flipper design, and so let's flip that thing open and go ahead and take a look at the blade. The blade is 4 inches of HCR 14 MOV steel. It's a spear point design with Bev Serrations and this gray coating. The coating has held up actually pretty well, and the blade itself has held up pretty well. The HCR 14 MOV is sort of, kind of a step up from HCR 13 MOV, and I have used this pretty extensively. I've cut up a whole bunch of different things and have not needed to sharpen it. So as far as I'm concerned, that's how I measure blade steel. Do I have to sharpen it every 5 minutes, or does it hold its edge for a week or 2 weeks? And really anything more than 3 or 4 days I'm happy with, because 3 or 4 days, give it a couple of swipes on the sharpener and you're back good to go. That's totally acceptable as far as I'm concerned. And so a lot of knives would fit that criteria, right? The Bev Serrations are outstanding, and because of this blade size, one of the things that I find is kind of important anyway with Bev Serrations is that you've got enough blade length to allow for a decent amount of serrations with a decent amount of plain edge. Otherwise, if it's a shorter blade, maybe just pick all of one or all of the other, fully serrated or fully plain edge. And of course, as you know, if you watch this, I would prefer fully plain edge in most cases. The Bev Serrations are definitely an exception. They are amazing. They slice basically just as well as a plain edge anyway. Plus, they guide material right into the top of the serration and just cut through it like you wouldn't believe. They're exceptional, and they're kind of make me eat my words about preferring a plain edge knife. I actually really like a knife that has Bev Serrations. They're just really, really great. So that's most of the stuff you need to know about the blade. You can bend these up a little bit, and they can dull, and they do get dull more like a standard edge blade, but they're also, because of the shape of them, they're not that bad to sharpen. Just take your round sharpening rod and slide that down, and you get a good edge back on those if they go dull, when they go dull. Not if, but when. So that's the blade. The handle, it is I guess a flipper design, and so that brings us down to this area. These here are blade stops. They're not thumb studs, and so I guess they work to deploy the blade. There you go. They can be used that way, but they don't work well, and that's because they're not meant to work for that. They're meant to stop the blade here as it's closed and then as it opens. And if you ever wonder about that, just look at the back of the knife. So on the back here, you can see that there's no stop pin anywhere in the handle to stop the blade. So it's got to be these functioning as blade stops, and that kind of lets you know what's stopping the blade and what function that little pillar sort of has. This knife does have the auto lock system, which it's okay. It doesn't ruin it. Like, people kind of complain that, I won't be able to open the knife as easily. I have no problem with it. With a little bit of practice, you can easily open and close the knife one-handed. This is a liner lock knife, and the auto locks just slides in beside the liner and stops you from being able to push it back over to disengage it from the blade. So that's how the auto locks works. You have to push the auto locks down, then you can move the lock bar over and close the blade. Not that difficult, not as bad, Would I be happier without it? Maybe a little happier, but it's certainly not going to stop me from owning this really cool knife. Pivot screw is just a slot there, and you can see just a standard slot screwdriver or a dime or a kitchen knife or whatever can be used to adjust that. And you see the 3 holes there, and they're here, and all 4 sort of positions on the blade so that you can put that pocket clip wherever you want it, which is nice. The handle scales are G10, and all these handles are similar, right? They all have the holes drilled out, and I'm sure that reduces some weight. This is still 6 ounces, even though it's all drilled out that way on both sides. But it's, you know, it's not the end of the world. I don't find it oppressive to carry, and I don't find myself going, oh man, I wish I didn't have this knife in my pocket. It's too big. None of that stuff is, you know, a big issue. Let's see. There's no lanyard hole, but let's see. If I'll close the blade for you. You can kind of see how this would function. You could put a lanyard around that bottom standoff and not have too much of a difficulty. Now, the one thing I need to say about this knife is that when I got it, it deployed pretty well, but there was blade play, and significant blade play. So I was like, this is not good. What the heck is going on here? So I tightened the pivot screw up, and then guess what? All you get is, I'm going to stop it on purpose. You go to deploy the knife, and this is what you'd get, and you'd have to open it the rest of the way with your thumb, or I'd, you know, give it a flick and it would come out. But the deployment sucked after I tightened the pivot screw to the point where there was no blade play. Now there's no blade play now, and it deploys like a champ, because what I did was took the knife apart, and the washers inside, and even the sides of the blade and the insides of the liners were filthy. They were covered in all kinds of crap. So I cleaned that all off. By the way, I find baby wipes work really well for that. They cut oil pretty well, and they naturally evaporate. So kind of an alcohol-based cleaner. So they evaporate off of whatever you're working on and allow you just to go ahead and oil. I use baby wipes to clean lots of things, guns and knives and stuff like that. And then because it evaporates on its own, all you've got to do is apply your oil and, you know, go to town. Obviously, you know, you got to be a little bit careful on raw metal and that kind of thing. So don't just go wiping down everything with baby wipes. There's some harsh chemicals in there, so be aware of that. But on a coated knife, you're not going to have any issue. And it was a bronze bushing and then a plastic bushing in here, and it actually worked out pretty well. And now, after I cleaned up those washers, put on some Hops 9 oil, which is what I generally use for all my knives, and now it's as smooth as silk, not a bit of blade play, deploys so nicely and easily that, yeah, just fantastic. Overall impressions on this knife are, oh, by the way, there is some jimping on the back of the blade, and so blade retention is actually excellent. The flipper, of course, works like a front finger choil. The jimping on the back of the blade gets you some grip on your thumb there, and so you can get a super tight grip on this blade. By the way, the handle is large enough that adds to your ability to really grip the blade and makes it just super comfortable in hand. You know, always a larger knife is going to be comfortable because you've got a big handle, you've got lots of knife to work with. A smaller knife ends up with a smaller handle, less leverage, all that kind of stuff. So this knife, if you're doing like bushcraft stuff, I carved up some wood at home, I cut off some branches, did a bunch of work with it to get a feel for it, and it functions extremely well. This is a great knife for anyone doing those kinds of things on a regular day-to-day basis that require a big knife. This is going to perform well for you. If, you know, it's probably a little big for certain applications. And so, you know, if I was in an office, if I wore a suit and tie to work every day and worked with a bunch of other people, I don't know if I would choose this as my everyday carry. I might own it and carry it on weekends, or when I wasn't going into work, or when I was going to be maybe traveling on sales calls or something. Sure, carry it then. But maybe a little big for everyday carry in an office. But it's certainly not too big for, you know, anyone who works outdoors, or who, you know, is traveling in your car all the time, who wears jeans. If you do a job that you wear jeans, you can carry this knife and probably have no issues. Overall, I really, really like this knife. I like the look of it. I love the Bev Serrations. I love the blade size and shape. I like the weight of it. This blade is actually quite thick. I didn't mention that when I was talking about the blade, but it's a good, it's almost 1/8 of an inch, just a little under, and that's a nice heavy size for me. I really like that. By the way, I do prefer this version. I have an M16 knife that has the dual Carson flippers and sort of becomes a full halberd, I think they call it, at the base of the blade. And that thing is kind of annoying, because if you want to do detailed work, you want to choke up, you want to get your thumb on the back of the blade, you've got this extra flipper sticking out in the way. So There is a knife just like this, only with an extra flipper. I think it's the Special Forces version. And I didn't take that one because this is much more comfortable. The ability to get your thumb there on that jimping and work away with the knife is a real added benefit. And so if you're going to look at one of these knives, I know the ones with the dual Carson flippers look cool. The functionality is only so-so. My M16 has the dual flippers. It works. I carry it. It's fine. But you just need to know that extra flipper does get in the way a little bit. It does allow you to deploy the knife with your thumb from this side, but it also gets in the way. So that's my take on the CRKT m21-14. If you're interested in this knife, I would say go to CRKT's website and check out. There's a bunch of different variations, so there may be one that you like particularly more. If you're interested in this specific one, all I could say is make sure that you kind of know the model. That may be, go to CRKT's website, or remember M21-14G, because there's lots of models. It'd be easy to think you're getting this knife in the full size and end up ordering the -12G, which is almost the same, only smaller, and you go, oh man, I wanted a bigger knife. I know I was very careful in ordering this to make sure I got the one I wanted, and so I'm going to give you sort of fair warning to do the same thing. That's my take on the CRKT m21-14. Very nice knife, pretty reasonably priced. I'm not going to, I don't know, probably 50 bucks or 45, something like that in the US. Over here it's probably around 55, but cool blade. I'm really glad that I've got it. Love the way it flips out, love the way it carries. Just a really cool blade overall. That's it. We'll talk to you later.